Hello, I am the cartoonist M. Rashid. This cartoon is in reference to how difficult it is to enjoy like modern corporate product, particularly in the music realm for me. And uh, I was already noticing uh, that I was having an issue with modern music for a while. And that was, at first, I was just interpreting it as being personally disappointed with the music trend and how it changed. And I didn't enjoy how it changed. But now, you know, music is different for reasons just beyond that, you know. Like the first thing is I disagree with art being tied to the profit motive because I think art is compromised like that way. Like you can't just enjoy the artist's vision without it being fiercely tainted by corporate. That's one thing. And then the other thing is the change, whatever makes the trends change. And then the other thing is music being compromised because of regular systemic racism stuff. Like all of these were an issue for me and keeping me from like really getting into music the way you know, the way I assumed that I would by the end of the 80s. And I happen to be a big fan of that, the 80s sound. My wife is like, thinks it's corny as hell. She thinks me liking it as much as I did is corny. And, you know, and she like rolls her eyes when that, you know, the synthesizer and like everything about that classic 80s sound comes on. She's like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the best. But the way music changed into the next decade, like there's plenty of really great songs from the 90s. I'm not saying it's not, but the way the music changed going into the 80s and the 90s doesn't feel the way, like it doesn't feel like I was disappointed that that 80s sound didn't actually evolve into its next form. Like it didn't do that. It turned something else, you know, with the New Jack Swing and everything else that came with it and stuff. And the how the rappers were encouraged to just sample previous songs instead of coming up with their own stuff. And you know, that trend and the other stuff, I just not feeling it. And then I had a like in the early '90s, there was a window. Well, I'll back up. In the '80s, there was a window where I could have really got into hip hop and rap and stuff. Like I was liking um, some of that early rap, but circumstances, like I mentioned in a previous video, that when the war on drugs started, my parents had the foresight to get us, and we had a similar situation like Dave Chappelle described. Like his parents took him out of DC sent him to his dad's farm in Ohio. So he was missed the hyper violent trafficking gangs of the crack wars and that life. So when he came back to the city, it was like completely different. you know. So I had a similar experience. My parents took us at the beginning during the Anton Chigurh initial stage of the war on drugs, got us out of there, and we went to like rural Michigan, and then came back to the city when I was like 18 or whatever. So during that time of living on a farm in rural Michigan, we didn't have access to a lot of TV. We had like a generator, and we would only watch like one channel, like on one day of the week and stuff like that. So there was a time period where I missed out on all the classic 80s stuff. So by the time I got to see things like The Last Dragon and, certain music and stuff, the time period when I was most receptive to being influenced by it had long passed. So the first time I saw The Last Dragon, after freaking out throughout my high school years that I was missing all that stuff, So by the time I got to see it, so much time had went by that when I watched it, there was no connect. In fact, it looked goofy as heck. Where if I would have saw it when I was, at 13 or whatever, and it came out, then I would have been all in like everybody else. Crush Groove and Breaking, like all the classic stuff from that time period. I missed it. It was out of the loop. So when I did see it, it was no longer fresh. It wasn't a thing anymore. I'm like, yeah, this is what I was crying about. So, but I still liked the music. The music was my only connect. The radio worked. So my parents had this old boombox up there, and I was like recording songs right off the radio, like a lot of people did. So I kept up with my favorite songs and things like that. I just didn't get as into rap at the time. I wasn't following the magazines and stuff like that. I didn't know what I was hearing yet. And so by the time the 90s came and I returned to the city and I was interacting more with my peers, when I would listen to the rap that was coming out in the 90s, I would notice that I was enjoying the chorus and not the rap part so much. And then when I found out that they were just sampling old songs for their chorus, and that was the part I liked the most, then I stopped listening to rap altogether and just started listening to the like oldie stations to find the full song that they were sampling. And that was the death of my the end of me getting on the hip hop train. After that, I just listened to old school R&B and old school pop and stuff, like all the way back to the 50s, and that started to make up the bulk of my enjoyment of music. Like I had discovered a whole new genre of, the disco era, all the old Motown stuff. I started getting into that instead, and was only, slowly stopped listening to the top Billboard stuff until eventually I listened to it anymore at all. And what that did, after spending all the 80s and early 90s, like listening to the radio, to tape off of it, I started to miss whatever the latest sound was. being listening to whatever the latest radio stuff was. I started to actually miss that feeling from my youth. And so years later, when I started hearing sounds that, like the song Stay by the Temptations, and then, Bruno Mars's songs, initially felt everything those songs were intended to make me feel. And when Michael died and his posthumous stuff started coming out, and like Hollywood Tonight, when they put Hollywood Tonight out, I was feeling the manipulation of what they were trying to do when they would just take the beat from Billie Jean and just alter it slightly and just do the same thing. And once I started, at first I was all enthusiastic about it because I felt 13 again listening to those beats, like I was primed for it, for that repackaged nostalgia fake music, you know. But it didn't last. I got over it. After a while I started feeling it and feeling it was plastic. This isn't the real thing. This isn't what Michael would have done. He would have tried to innovate. He would have been real. He wouldn't have just like repackaged that. So then I started feeling a certain way about it. Like the music didn't change for the better, it changed for corporate's taste. And I felt not betrayed, but hurt and angry about it. Like, that I have to receive a lesser quality of this art because of corporate's manipulations. Like it wasn't fair. It was, And then there's another part to that. Today, all these immigrants are cosplaying as ADOS music stars and replacing us in those markets, connected to corporate's penchant for being risk adverse, and they don't want to, risk money on original material anymore. Once they have enough material in their catalog, now they just want to reboot and redo and, repackage and, what they already have. Things that work, including Hollywood, of course. They just want to repackage what's already in the vaults because they have merged and manipulated the markets enough where they no longer have any competition. It's like one big super conglomerate super company that has no competition to speak of. So what do I need to risk original material seed money for? I'll just repackage what you already know. I'll take the stuff that had the biggest response and made the biggest money over the years and just do that over and over and over again because I can. And you don't have any other choice because the markets are manipulated and I'm the only game in town. That's how it flows, So, and now you could see with this AI art thing that it's their intention of having to analyze what was successful in the past and just have the computer duplicate it. We'll just do that. Now I don't need human artistic innovation at all. I'll just have the computer do it. That's what corporate thinks about art. They don't give a shit about art. It's just crank out product, artificial IP that's close enough, and they'll give us their money. So, watching that, and then watching them allowing immigrants and white people and to cosplay as my R&B stars who made the sound that changed the world, and you're doing your impression of me, do it, and locking me out of those markets. I'm the one that built those markets. The sounds and stuff that you all dance to, it was my people who built that sound that the whole world changed. The whole world changed from American music and how it swept through the nations. Everybody's doing their impression of me now and locking me out so I don't, you could see how Michael and Prince and the superstar artists, Anita Baker recently, and how she sold, they don't want to share that wealth. They don't want to share that wealth with the Black American at all, at any level, They can lock us out completely. They don't want no more stars being born from us, They want to analyze us and take our sound, our product, our voice, everything about us that made the whole world, oh my God, we want to be like them. So all the white artists and stuff, the classic white artists, when you talk to them in an interview, you find out that they're just doing their impression of Wilson Pickett and Sam Cooke and them. And I love them, doing my best, but trying to sing just like that. And you're the who's who of white artists over the decades. It turns out that they were just trying to mimic the Black artists that they love so much. From Elton John to like all of them. And now you have sufficient amount of product where you can just have the computer analyze what made it work, and and now everybody else can do their impression of me, and now you don't want me to play anymore. Keep an eye on me in case my pension for in my subjugated, abused state, necessity is the mother of invention. I create a new art form, and then you can pounce on it and take that too. That's where I'm still in the bondsman class. In spirit, the spirit of the country, the spirit of the country's dominant identity group keeps me in that space for those reasons, so I can be farmed of new IP ideas. So you might as well take that and toss it on top of my reparations, because you owe me for that too. Peace.